street, they were completely rammed. They were filled up to the gunnels, they were queuing down the street. They said, you should have been here last week. I swear, you should have been here last week. Oh yeah, you should have been here last week.
Hello and welcome to the special live performance of the podcast. You should have been here last week. The podcast that looks at the shining, wondrous beauty that is the comedy circuit. And each episode, my fellow comedian, Paul Ricketts,
Evening,
and myself will take a peek behind the glittery comedy curtain and see the shadowy and occasionally joyous forces that shape our comedy world. And tonight's edition, or today's edition, comes to you live from the Bedford in Balham, southwest London. Give us a cheer, Bedford. Hey. Normally home of the second oldest comedy club in the UK, apparently, according to them, Banana Cabaret. But today we are part of the Cheerful Earful podcast.
Yes,
festival.
it is. International Podcast Festival.
It's international as well. And thank you very much for coming. And it's good to be here, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is good to be here.
Yeah.
Rather than at home.
Yeah. So we've interviewed lots and lots of people. We've interviewed lots of comedy promoters. We've interviewed lots of comedians. Everybody from all people involved in every sort of aspect of the comedy industry. And we're really, really happy to have as our guest today one of our favourites. Shall I bring him on?
Yes, I think you should do.
Okay. We're delighted to have as our guest this afternoon on the podcast the multi-award-winning stand-up comedian, author, podcaster, train traveller, broadcaster, self-confessed bibliomaniac and recovering Morrissey fan. Yeah. Please welcome onto the stage, Robin Ince.
Hello everyone. I was just looking, I was going to do, because I know we're going to be talking about the comedy business, and there was a poem that I wrote the other day about the comedians that played Riyadh, and it's called Wanking with Louis in Saudi.
We can
deal with that later on.
I was going to ask you to do that.
Yeah. Just, I thought I'd basically get that out there right from the start, my foul communist
attitude. Should we talk about that then? Should we talk about that right from the start? Or
whenever you want to.
Okay, so building up the poem that you're going to hear in a bit, right? It's... if you don't know this, there's a whole group of comics from America and Britain that basically went and did the Riyadh Comedy Festival, which is the first ever occasion it's taken place. And a lot of these people turned up and got paid a hell of a lot of money for performing there.
Some of them said they didn't get paid as much as you might have heard, which I don't think makes the situation better.
Yeah.
I think, if anything, that makes it, oh no, I sold all my morals away for almost nothing.
Yeah, I got mugged off in Riyadh.
It was some magic beans that I was given by a king.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to, because I was going to say, is there a price for comedians? Because let's face it, basically, we perform for money, don't we? If someone offers us money, we'll go, yeah. How much? How long?
But I think that's, I don't know what you think, Sid, but if this bit where the first time that you turn down some money, a reasonable amount of money, is the first time you start to find out what your ethics are, because I don't think you never truly know what your ethics are until someone said, look at this case of cash. And the moment that you've got... So one of the most stupid ones that I ever did was I was offered this corporate gig, and it was absolutely fine, the company, but I'd already promised my son, who was 6 at the time, that I'd take him to his first ever school disco. And so I turned down what was quite a large amount of money, probably the most highly paid gig, because I thought I promised my son I'd take him to school disco. Of course, once I was there, he didn't even notice I existed for 3 hours.
So it wasn't worth
it. So I still did the right thing, but I'd never do that again. Also, he doesn't want me at the school disco now. He's 18.
No. Oh, God. No, terrible. I mean, there's been a lot of controversy about it. Omar Jalili's published a letter in The Guardian, didn't he? In which he said, he did make a terribly crass joke, didn't he? He said, I hope the next group of gigs won't be axed. which in the context of what's happened in Riyadh is pretty crass and insensitive.
Well, I mean, I think the main thing about it is that some of those comics have talked a lot and made a lot of money out of talking about how they're free speech, edgy comics, which generally means they punch down and they dehumanise minority groups. And so they've done all this bigging up. So someone like Jimmy Carr, who has described himself as a free speech absolutist, then goes off to perform with a man who used to surprise women by starting to masturbate in front of them. So it's like, if you can't even make it, so you go, oh, it's pretty bad that I'm going out to Saudi and taking that money when I've always said I'm a free speech absolutist, but sometimes people are hacked to pieces with a bone saw and put in a suitcase if they've said bad things. But I'll let that go. Also, it will be good if I'm on with a sexual predator, because then people can really know. And that, to me, is virtue signalling. That really is signalling your virtues very specifically.
We've talked a lot about this on the podcast in previous episodes about joke stealing, because one of the things that's meant to distinguish this circuit that we're on from the older working men's club type circuits is that you have to write your own material. I mean, I was present at the very, very famous summit that occurred at the Comedy Cafe many years ago, when Lee Hurst turned up and punched another comic in the face for nicking one of his jokes. I mean, it was very violent, but I mean, people get very upset about it. I mean, there was a famous example of Stan Boardman's son used to be on the comedy circuit, and he was doing a warm-up for a television thing, and for the warm-up he just did a string of other people's jokes, and they stopped, and the director came down from the gantry and said, look, you just can't do that. They're other people's jokes. And this is his reply. He went, yeah, but jokes are sort of like they float around in the air, and you just pluck the jokes from the air.
You mean they come out of a speaker when you're watching a comedian? I mean, you're right in some ways. That it is true that sound waves almost kind of float around in the air. But
exactly. Well, no, people sit down and fucking write them. Anyway.
But that's I mean, you're right. It's one of the things that I love watching. I love watching someone when I really have to believe it is them. And it doesn't have to be autobiographical. Like when I watch Milton Jones, I'm delighted to watch Milton Jones because I think he creates these fantastic Gary Larson cartoons. When I watch Tim Vine trying to catch a pen behind his ear, that is really watching Tim Vine. That is someone who, he's not kind of going, I think I'll put on a bit of front of being a bit silly and really intending. He really wants to catch that pen. But if you've never seen it, have anyone here seen Pen Behind the Ear?
Yeah.
Oh, right. It's just, Tim has a cup of pens, and then some music starts, which goes, pen behind the ear, pen behind the ear. I won't do it too much because then I know you've got to pay copyright, right? And and he starts throwing pens, these little bit borrows, and tries to catch them in his ear. And he really does try. He's not like to, and occasionally he's caught it maybe in 3, but very often he doesn't manage it at all. And he's an empty cup, and everyone goes, and he scrabbles around on the floor, picks up all the pens, and then the music starts to go, pen behind the ear, and he will not stop until he's caught the pen in his ear. And to me, that is like the work of Albert Camus.
I'm sure Tim would be happy with that comparison. I mean, that's...
It's funny that he's the serious one out of the Vine brothers, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He'd be much better on radio too, wouldn't he? I wanted to ask, that sort of begs the question, when you were growing up, what comedians did you see, on TV, etc., or on the radio that sort of inspired you to be a comedian in the first place? Who were your sort of role models?
Oh, I think the first ones, it was alternative comedy. But I mean, I'd loved the Goodies. The Goodies books were so important to sit there. And, I was very lucky, actually. A very sad thing in many ways, which is not long before Tim died, I did the 50th anniversary of the Goodies event in the Bristol Slapstick Festival, and all 3 of them together. There was a beautiful thing where the public voted for their favourite episode, and then the episode would be screened, and Tim and Graham and Bill would watch it, and the public voted for an episode that all 3 of them can't stand. So they then had to sit
Was
there.
it the Giant Cat one?
No, it's not the Giant Cat one. I think it was. I don't think they're that keen on the Ecky Thump one. I think well, I think it's one of those ones, a bit like someone's hit. You know what I mean? That it's kind of, and I understand why. And it was also that every now and again the Goodies, there are these bits where you go, oh, that, even though they're all 3 of them progressive people, always were, but and I think Bill kind of sat there every now and again going, that bit's quite racist. Did you write it, Graham? And it was. But it was such the celebration in that room and the love for them. And I remember I'd done an event with Tim earlier that day about Marty Feldman, filled with energy and delight. And so when, whatever it was, 6 weeks later, 2 months later, my friend Chris rang me up. He runs the Slapstick Festival. If I get rung before 9 a.m, I know it's because someone's died. And it was Tim. And I'm so glad. And what was lovely about that event as well was Bill had a really nice time. And as some of you probably know, Bill has a lot of battles with his mental health. He can be, has found existence sometimes very, very difficult. And but he really enjoyed it. And we were having breakfast on the Monday morning. He went, I've had a nice weekend. Because Bill's one of those people I've done stuff with sometimes. I thought, that didn't go very well. And he went, well, that was fun then, wasn't it? And you go, oh, okay, that was fun. Good, that's all right. I was a bit worried about that. So, so the goodies were incredibly important. And then it would have been, I think, seeing Rick Mayall on Kick Up the 80s, doing Kevin Turvey, 10 years old. It's that bit we were talking about, like music, two things happen almost at the same time. Suddenly there's bits of alternative comedy appearing on television and Two Tone begins. And for a middle-class kid, in the home counties, suddenly you're getting this education, watching Alexi Sale on OTT and, leaping up and down and that kind of, it was just amazing. And I think from that, I'd always wanted to be a writer, I think. That's what I'd always, I'd hoped that I could create or be a writer or do something like that. And then watching alternative comedy was that was me, the 100 Club of the Sex Pistols, basically, for I think my generation.
How long did it take you to sort of realise your ambition after that then to get into comedy?
The first
basically I'm asking,
gig.
What's your first gig?
Well, the first terrible gig was when I was 18, and then I did a terrible gig when I was 19. And then I did one when I was about 21.
Wait. What happened at 18? Come
18,
on.
I went...
Where was it?
One of my sisters knew that I wanted to be a comedian and said, why don't you come and do some comedy for the party this people are having? And they were so... All I remember is their patience. And, it was up there with an Ingmar Bergman film in terms of patience.
So you stopped a party, a teenage party?
No, my sisters were older than me. So they were in their 20s, and so they just looked at a child who was confused, and knowing that I carried various issues with me that I should not in any way be riled, because I once stabbed a boy in the face with a pen, and so I did that, and then I went down. I think it was Southend Jesters when I was about 19 or 20. I went to see a discussion about Trevor Griffith's comedians, and Arthur Smith was there, and I went up to Arthur and went, I want to be a comedian, and he said, there's this gig, and I went and died on my arse there, and then sometime around then I started to... I had this thing, I couldn't really... I find using the phone very difficult, and I did then. So I think the first proper club gig I did, I got booked for a 20 straight away, because I did longer than I was meant to in the open spot, because I've never been very good on time. And they went, well, normally we put you for a half, but we've already seen that you can do longer than that. So, but then I wouldn't ring anyone else. So it was a Ranji Boom Boom, which is a beautiful club, Dehems Street.
Bar,
Dehems Bar in Soho, just near Chinatown. And then, so I wouldn't do that many gigs. And then I went up and I did So You Think You're Funny. I'd got seen by a guy called John Tiffany, who said, come and do the competition. And I didn't know anyone there, because everyone else had been working on the circuit. And it was, on the night of the final, Rona Cameron came up to me and went, you do know it's between you and me? Which made me like, what the... And I hadn't read the thing properly, so I thought you had to do a whole 10 minutes of new material. Not different to the other 10 minutes you've done, which is what happens all the time. Yeah. But from that point onwards, that was kind of I would say the start. So I was 22 then. But the 90s I see as frittering a lot of that away, not really finding what I wanted to do. I've made a living.
Yeah, obviously you've made a very good living. It's interesting you should say that your first 3 gigs were like horrible, but it's still, there's that thing that comedy, once it gets its claws into you, it just won't let go. Even though a lot of people who aren't fitted out to be comedians were just gone, oh, fuck this is horrible. Yeah. You sort of went, yeah, this is for me.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Which is, I think, occasionally if people run a comedy course and they say, would you come and do a talk? And I go, I don't know if I've got anything to say, but I'll say something. And I'll always say to people, is there anything else you want to do nearly as much or as much? Because if there is, do that. You have to, I think you can really tell now the industry is so huge and it's so disparate. And like, talking about the Riyadh thing, I think that's a great marker of the difference between what I would call alternative comedy, which still exists, the fringe comedy. I would say someone like Marilyn Robertson, have you seen Marilyn Robertson?
No, I haven't.
Well, she's from the Shetland Islands. So the moment that she talks, there's something uncanny already because people kind of going, it's a Scottish accent, it's got a bit of scan. She's an amazing storyteller. She did a show last year in Edinburgh about, she has this condition, she's under control now, but it used to be that when she menstruated, she could bleed to death. She decided to do a funny show about that, and it was funny. And before she went on stage, she'd start just spraying some fake blood onto the stage. And she said some nights, so the show hasn't even started, but she'd hear someone in the front row going, "No, not for me." And I think getting the walkout before you've even walked on saves so much time.
Wow,
and so people like her and Hannah and obviously Josie Long, who are still very good. So I think it's. I can't remember why I started saying this. I've not been well. So anyway, what was the question? It's nice, isn't it? Oh no, it's just about it is that thing.
It's the vocation of it.
The difference of watching, like Josie Long, there is no alternative universe. Josie her destiny is to create shows, create brilliant bits of art. Her latest show, Now Is the Time of Monsters, is as fantastic as ever. Stuart Lee. There isn't really an alternative. And when I watch those people, I go, they're not going, this is a stepping stone.
No.
Because they've stepped now onto where they want to be. And they go, right, this is it. I have to do this. And I've tried giving up stand-up, and I get headaches, basically. It's like, lockdown, the first 4 days of lockdown, I had this terrible headache. I was like, oh, God, where's this come from? And then I sat down and I wrote like 5,000 words of just this idea that I was thinking about. And then I went, oh, the headache's gone. Like the words are punching up against your skull.
I mean, on a serious note, a lot of people, you just mentioned that a lot of younger comics cannot survive in this industry as we have it now in this business without having a proper job, a day job.
Yes.
It's almost impossible to make a full-time living out of comedy now because...
Well, it amazed me when I took a break from doing the clubs and then went back. I was like, I think most of the pay is the same as it was in 1993.
It is.
And some of it's gone down. And yet the ticket is 5 times, 10 times the price. The beer is 5 times the price. Yeah. Where has that gone?
Where's all that money gone?
Yeah. And I can only think Jimmy Carr. So, but it is, that is a very important point as well, because something that, there's now a working class collective in Edinburgh who and having that where you go like Edinburgh Fringe now, you can't really do it unless you've got a big body of money but behind you, or you've made enough friends with people that you don't have to pay $3,000 for just
the accommodation.
Accommodation. So, and I think that's across the arts now. It's returning to being a very middle class and upper middle class pursuit. Because like some of the edgy comics that I've heard about, and I see their edgy stuff, and then I found out that when they were 18, their mum and dad bought them a flat in the middle of Tower Bridge or something, like Peter Cushing in Biggles. And you think, to not know the risk involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'd also say there's a difference between being a club comic and being a show comic. So when you were saying that there was a lost period in the 90s, was the lost period being a club comic and not being a show comic?
No, do you know what it was? I wasn't a good enough comic. That's what it was. I drank too much and I didn't come up with great... I used to be quite good at improvising, and so I could get away with stuff. But I used to find that I'd have a week of doing new stuff. And then one day I'd suddenly go back to, that first routine that worked, and it would then stick again, and I'd be stuck on that. So it wasn't about the clubs, because I still do play clubs every now and again, and I do like, the ones where, when it's nice comics backstage, because I always found that difficult. It's like, I remember once losing money on a gig because it was like, you've got to lift up to Sunderland, and it was comic that I couldn't stand. So I thought, I'm going to have to get a B&B. I'm going to be about £100 down, but I'm not spending 6 hours with that prick.
Well, he makes fun of me because I do look ahead in the listings and I check months and months of it might be OCD, but if there's someone on the bill I don't like,
I don't
cancel the gig.
I do not
I
care.
don't want to work with them.
Well, it might be you're the one that no one likes.
Yeah. I hope
I
it's
don't
that
think it
way.
is, though.
No, I think that would. I'd be proud if it was that, because I'd like the fact to go into a room and everyone goes, "Oh no." I'd like that. At least that's some effect.
But I always used to find that when I looked at the jonglers lineups, and I never really did jonglers. It wasn't kind of a thing that I think I had the capability to do. And I would look and I'd go, every single club around the country seems to have one person. You go, that bloke's really great. And everyone else on that bill is awful. Why don't they put all of those people who are now in Leicester and Nottingham or whatever, just put them in the one club and they'll have a lovely time.
Yeah.
But each
Just
one
call
of
it
those...
the nice people bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, everyone's lovely. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the difference then between club comedy, doing your 20-minute set, and knocking out the show? Apart from you get to go deeper and it's longer.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, one of the things is, I think sometimes with club comedy, one of the things that happens because it's such a short set as well, is you have to, you immediately go, right, what do I need to you in this room? I have to address this room and their concerns.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas I think with a longer show, they're coming to your show. You're still taking... I mean, I always think that's one of the things that I don't like about watching crowd work is I think crowd work is now always explained as very much being, where are you from? That place is shit or posh. Oh, are you married to that person? She'll leave you because you're quite ugly and she's not, right? And all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very short version of that, but I think it's dynamite. And then... but to me, real crowd work is being in the is you are reacting to, like last night I was in Stafford, beautiful little theatre there with a bunch of comics, and that was that I could just hear, you hear different rumblings. You've got a different, those spidey senses that mean it's almost unconscious what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I think the two skills, I think you have to. I think it's really important as a club comic to be very aware that you are kind of right. I want these people to have a great time, but also not to be so aware that you underestimate the abilities of the audience, which I think often happens. I think people walk out to an audience, they see a group of old people, or they see some kids, or whatever it is, and they make presumptions about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got an hour, 2 hours, 3, 4 hours from one event I did in Belfast, then still only at 50% Ken Dodd, but I'm trying. But if you've got time to work that audience more, to really find them. With 20 minutes, you've got to make a lot of fast decisions, I think. And I think quite often we can make a decision where you think, that wasn't the most interesting decision, but I had a much shorter time to do it.
So I was going to also say about the subject matter. For a show, usually you need a subject matter, but your set, you don't. You just come on and say anything that you think is funny or... So you think it's easier to find your voice doing a show than it is by doing lots of sets?
But I think you need to do both.
Yeah.
I don't think, if you don't go out, I think it's really, even if you learn that a lot of the stuff doesn't work. When I went back last January, I went back and did a bunch of clubs, because I thought, I've not done clubs for ages, I'm not on tour. I just want to see if I can do what I do in long shows, similar kind of ideas within 20 minutes or half an hour. And I found that I could, which is very interesting, because I would sometimes go, right, sometimes in the shows I'll do something which is not necessarily funny, but might be something that I believe in deeply and is something that might make me sad or whatever. And I found it very interesting to play some of those clubs and think, oh, all right, I'm going to take this risk now, and find out the audience were totally up for it. That they didn't always need, like Attila the stockbroker, who I've known for a while, and Attila, we'll often talk about that fact that one of the problems with comedy is people think it has to be funny all the time, whereas in fact being interesting is, that bit where someone goes, what, I didn't laugh as much at that act, but my God, everything stayed with me. And I remember watching that with Stuart Lee once. There was a very clubby club comic on, and he got loads of laughs. But they were all laughs that were like, ha! Next one. There was no sense of it going into them. And then Stuart, did a very lengthy routine. I think it might have been the kitten and the dogs or something like that. Look at that. Because he used to do that thing where he was like really determined to alienate the audience. Because I remember I used to sometimes say to friends, you've got to go and see Stuart Lee, does this great routine. And then I'd do a bit of the routine, and they'd come back and they'd go, you do it faster. He spent ages doing it. he got really boring. And it was like, but and now that he's also found slapstick, not that he didn't have, you know what I mean? When his trousers fall down and when he's playing, in his new show, he's dressed as a werewolf, right, for the second half. Yeah. All of that stuff. But I think that's part of it as well, which it's like there's great pop tunes, but they don't really stay with you. And then there's bits of music that sometimes are quite hard and they take a while to get into. And then you go, oh, that's the thing that I love now. And that's the most important thing. So I think that in some ways, I think 20 minutes is a really important, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, is a really important thing to learn some of those skills and to also have to play to hostile audiences. I mean, it seems horrible when you look back, when people say, no, don't worry, you'll learn from this. You go, fucking hell, I won't bloody learn anything from that. All making animal noises throughout, right? But then you do go, yeah, okay, I now, and sometimes you can go, because I always think there's two different kinds of comedy. There's a lot more than two, but there's one that I would call the beloved entertainer. The beloved entertainer wants to make you laugh by whatever means necessary and doesn't care who you are. Yeah. Then there's the act who goes, do you know what? I think those people might be pricks and I don't care about them. In fact, I don't even want to make them laugh. That's after some knowledge of them. It's not just by, that bit. Like I remember once doing a gig where I'd been doing solo tour and then I was playing one of the gigs. It used to be at Heaven nightclub. It was Covent Garden.
Yeah.
And I remember just looking and going, oh, shit, this is a real change from the crowd that I've had. And I started going through old routines, thinking, oh, that worked. And then I went, no, dig your heels in. And it really did physically feel like I was digging my heels into that stage and and it took a bit of time. But by the end of it, I would say 90% of the crowd really enjoyed it. And one of the things that was in my mind was, what if maybe two people have come along because they go, oh, we've seen him, we like him. And then I deliver something where they go, oh, he's not the comic that... So I have to think of those things as well. I don't want to misrepresent myself by doing old routines that I knew work but don't mean anything to me. It's important that it has some meaning to me. And then there were 10% of the audience didn't laugh, and afterwards someone went, oh yeah, that was the crowd that said they were all going to vote UKIP. So I went, oh good, I'm really glad I wasted their time.
Yeah, serves him right. I mean, there is a thing that this can happen to any comic when you're backstage and you're looking at the audience and you just peek out the curtain or whatever, and we've talked about it, me and Paul, a lot of talking yourself out of the gig. Yeah. Just going, oh, for God's sake, I hate that. That guy's got curly hair and glasses. God, he's going to hate me. And of course, 9 times out of 10 turned out not to be true. I mean, actually, talking of the UKIP thing, I did a gig on Thursday night in the Conservative Club in Ruislip. And I actually came out and said, it's great to be playing at the Conservative Club, soon to be renamed Reform UK Limited Club. Right, so everyone laughed except for 2 blokes at the front who looked a bit like me. And they had leather jackets on and they were both, and they just sat like this. And for the rest of the 25 minutes, they didn't crack a smile, they didn't applaud, and they were just eyeballing me. They hated it. And I did that jocular thing, which a lot of comics do when you go, oh, well, you're not going to enjoy the next 25 minutes. And of course, I was quite right. Yeah. They didn't. They hated it. Then they attempted to speak to me afterwards, and I did that cracking thing. I just went, no, I'm off stage now, can't talk. And I got straight into the car and left. But I think we were saying that this is going to happen more and more because,
I think it's important to not view it as it's a difficult balance, isn't it? Because you've got to make enough money to make a living, but you also don't want to suddenly one day wake up and go, oh, I've become the thing that I hate. And I think that's another thing that can happen. You can get, as I did in the 90s, you can get lazy and you're not really in the room. You're doing some stuff. And it's, to me, it's a very important thing when I'm thinking about what I'm going to do in a show is why am I going to talk about these things? Why do I wonder? Like last night, I did a load of stuff about knitting because I like talking about knitting, and I've got a poem about knitting. And then I had to write a poem about crochet because if you do a poem about knitting, it doesn't bring the audience together. It means all the crocheters go, fuck all for us, I notice again. And then you have to do one about weaving, but you don't have to do one about tanning because they never turn up. And it's like this kind of But that bit of just going, I love doing that because it also has stuff about autism in it, and it has stuff about anxiety, and it has some silly jokes in it, and I feel there's a purpose to it. And not in some grand, highfalutin way, just in that bit of, I do genuinely, and I know this sounds, it sounds naive or stupid, I really want people to feel happier to be alive when they leave a gig, whether it's because I've sometimes talked about some of the political things that, because like a lot of old people, the presumption of them being anti-trans, for instance, because there's this whole anti-trans narrative. And I've found different, like I had a copy of Jenny Lives with Eric and Martin. I don't know if you remember that book. That was the book that was used to push through Section 28.
Yeah.
It's a very innocuous children's book where a little girl called Jenny lives with her gay dad and his partner. So I would read out bits from that book, and it's such a funny book when you can think of how it was used as this foul piece of gay pornography that is, Kenneth Baker or whatever would say. And then I'll put in just a little bit, just talking about the current dehumanisation of trans people. And we've seen a lot of that in comedy, obviously, not just Ricky Gervais, but, there's a lot of that lazy stuff. And the number of times that a woman in her 80s will kind of wander up and just go, I enjoyed that. I was a bit worried when you brought up the trans thing because my granddaughter's trans or, my grandchild's non. And you just see all of these people, the unrepresented. That's kind of part of what I feel like a lot of the shows that I do are for all of these kind people of so many different ages with huge hearts and welcoming arms who aren't fucking anti-refugee and they're not anti-immigrant and they're not anti-LGBT. And so when I got there, I think, I will sometimes say, just so you know, I'm very much with Kathy Burke on the I'd rather be woke than an ignorant twat. And, and again, you might find there's two men sat at the front who go, this is not going to be for me then. Yeah. And I'll be over the moon about that.
I know.
Be really happy.
Yeah, I wish I could be. Yeah, sometimes I have to play Bournemouth.
Is that still compared by the guy whose comparing technique was to down a pint of Guinness in one while the William Tell Overture played?
No. He's gone actually.
Yeah, sadly, he's dead now.
No, he's not dead. He bought
over by a horse. Tragically, it wasn't the Guinness at all.
No, he bought a bus. He bought a bus and moved to Herefordshire. That's actually totally true.
Well, that's like being dead, isn't it?
But yeah, sometimes you are doing Bournemouth, and and it's all stags and hens. And before I slag off Bournemouth for no particular reason, just because it's Bournemouth, it's a terrible gig in a nightclub called what's the name of the night? Cameo nightclub. And yeah, you can't go out there and I do jokes there that I will never do anywhere else because
do you feel dirty afterwards?
No, when I take the money. I feel like I've deserved the money.
I mean, you mentioned we were going to briefly touch on this because we talked about comics that you like working with, comedy, and I know that you've spoken extensively about your relationship with Ricky Gervais and the bullying thing. But I mean, I'm glad that you spoke out about it because I think there can be a tendency on the comedy circuit for that to happen.
Yeah,
it's quite common in a way. And there's well, I'm not going to name any names, but there are people still doing that sort of thing,
Yeah, the Ricky thing was really because I first met him probably in 1993, so we'd known each other for a long time. And then I think he's one of those people, he got famous and then said, fame hasn't changed me. And a lot of people who have changed my fame say that fame's not changed me. And I think what it really gave him was permission to be who he really was, because I wasn't the first and I won't have been the last. It was, anyone who's seen some of the extras where the guy's meant to be editing the stuff is wrapped up in gaffer tape and it's all great fun. But it's not if you're the person being, right, but you have to kind of laugh along because this is the employer. But it was very odd when we'd argued a lot. We hadn't worked together for years, but we would still talk a lot, especially on the phone. And he would quite often ring me up kind of to justify a routine and check what I thought. And sometimes I would say, look, I really don't think that the people you're aiming at, it's not good enough to pretend that it's irony, because irony doesn't travel very far in comedy. It very often becomes, so I did go and see Alf Garnett live once, Warren Mitchell, brilliant, and a great kind of left-wing firebrand as a human being and great writer, of course, as well. Johnny
Spate.
Johnny Spate, yeah. And but within about 15 minutes, because you're in the company of him, you start to kind of feel that he is your pal. And in the same way you watch Get Carter, Michael Caine's a horrible, horrible character, but by the end you almost feel sad because you're just in the company of them.
Yeah.
So with Ricky, I kept saying, look, you're dehumanising people whose lives are already really difficult. And then when I watched the beginning of Armageddon, which I think and I was just not only appalled by the nastiness of the jokes, but also the fact that they weren't very clever jokes. They weren't jokes that were like, oh my God, but you know what? I can understand the wit. Because they were that kind of like, yeah, I'm going to identify as a chair then. That kind of thing. And it was... So I wrote a piece, and I didn't try and sell it. I think I'd have made a few grand. I could have been... But I just put it up on my blog post, and I wrote such a gentle piece saying... I think when we have a platform, and the bigger the platform gets, you really have to think about the damage you might be causing for people who, every time they leave their front door. And basically, apart from, on this, it's you and me, right? We're white guys, and when we leave the front door, we leave with probably the least amount of potential harassment.
Yeah,
but
I leave to paint roundabouts.
Yeah, so
I look like that, I know, but sorry, Robert.
But it's I like the fact that you look like the two people who didn't like you at all. It's kind of it's a little bit like the Rogue film, isn't it? Performance. Was that really you, or was that James Fox playing you? But yeah, so I wrote this incredibly gentle piece, and then it just all kicked off.
Yeah.
And I didn't get involved in it, but thousands and thousands of death threats and all this kind of hate and all these accusations. And I never spoke to him again. He never made contact.
I mean, how long ago was that?
This was, I think, 3 years ago, something like that. And it was, but I thought it was interesting that someone who says you've got to get used to hearing things that you don't like is unable to hear something they don't like. And I think that sums up the bullying thing. But I really did think, and I think it's such a waste of someone who is obviously has a great comedy mind. And I don't think really seems to their stand-up, because it sells whatever, just feels lazy to me. And that's something that I just, when you watch a stand-up, you can watch someone fail, but fail with such tenacity. That bit where you go, you're putting everything into this. Yeah. You really care. But to watch someone just kind of go, that'll do, to me is the worst form of comedy or anything, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be pretty much amongst comedians. There is grudging respect that, you can do it. But we all know it's all route one.
Well, that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen was a guy that we all know is called Addy van der Borg. And he did a gig in Maidstone, and a notoriously horrible, horrible gig. And there was about 200 people, and they were all pissed. And most of them, looked like potential members of the EDL. And he was doing his sort of lovely, gentle comedy and dying so... I don't think I've ever seen someone die that spectacularly, but he did it beautifully well, because they were just... Instead of heckling him, they just started talking. The worst kind of death, where the volume of talk just goes... In the end, it's like a wall of noise. But he pretended like it was the best gig he'd ever done in his life. Nice. And he was doing stuff like, you know what I mean? He came off after 20 minutes of absolute vile death. And he was actually, we were almost crying. And the rest of the community said that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Because he didn't admit to the audience. They didn't get to him at all. Obviously, he might have gone home and been very, very depressed. But in that moment, it was a fantastic thing to watch.
Yeah, the butterfly being crushed under the wheel. Yeah. You find that, what a beautiful thing.
But is there a point where you've done enough gigs and you're all right at what you do?
Yeah.
That you just think, you know what, it didn't work tonight. Because I think, that's how I kind of have it in my head, which is, if it does go wrong, years ago, until about 3 or 4 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do that, because I was absolutely racked with anxiety about the whole of life, and I had a lot of stuff that I was kind of hiding. Whereas now, I just think, the only thing that will annoy me is if I ever walk off and I think, you didn't put enough effort in. That'll annoy me. I could do well and still walk off and hate myself more than if I died. If I died with a huge amount of energy and desire to really create something interesting, I think, that didn't work with them. If I succeeded, but I think, no, I didn't connect. There was a lack of connection. That will really get to me.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'll go with that. I mean, obviously, if I succeeded and I was still thinking about my laundry list, but somehow they were still all laughing, I would take that. happily take that and not give yourself a hard time on the way home. I think when you die, my thing is you try and work out what you did wrong because it's going to be your fault. It's never. I'd love to blame you. I really would, but a lot of the time, it's got nothing to do with you.
But it's also not your fault. Sometimes you meet people you don't get on with. And if you look at it like that and you go, we just didn't get on. And it's not your fault, because it's only your fault if you go, like, sometimes comics will go, unless you can play to 200 people who are pissed out of their head and being dealt heroin at the same time, you're not a proper comic. And you go, it's the George Carlin thing that I go back to a lot, where he talk about the difference between a comic and a comedian. And he'd say a comic is someone like Bob Hope. Bob Hope would go on stage, he would do an hour of gags. Everyone had a lovely time watching him do his gags, but no one knew anything more about him.
Well, that's Jimmy Carr, isn't it?
Yeah, and whereas the comedian and that Carlin, Billy Connolly, I've mentioned Josie Long already. Those I mean, I think that's the bit that I really love, is that if someone hates my show, they do hate me. Because it's not an act. It's such the flimsiness between me off. I mean, that's why quite often I'm on stage for the half hour that the audience come in. Because I'm just like, I just chat to people. I'm just, because I like to remove the artifice that go, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, it's showtime. And I like that bit. They go, oh, the lights have changed, so now it's the beginning. It's not actually going to be that different to the previous half hour. But
so you must have been pissed off when I removed us all from the front table before you lot came in. We were all sat there. And
well, do you know what? That's the thing is, when you said you were going to introduce me, as much as possible, I avoid that. Like when I do book events, I don't mind it. No. But I don't mind it. But when I do book events and things like that, and they go, I'm going to go up and I'm going to introduce you, I say, let's just stand together. But it is that thing where I quite like that bit of not going, hello, I'm special. Because I'm obviously going to explain that for 2 hours, how special I am anyway.
It's interesting the way that audiences react to comedians, though, because they all always feel that they can say stuff to you that they would never say to anybody. People come up to you. I mean, this is a true story. I was once at the Comedy Store, and there was a beautiful woman at the bar, and she beckoned me over, and she said, can I buy you a drink? And I said, oh yeah. And we sat there, we're having a drink. She goes, was that you? Was that you just did was that you on stage before? And I went, well, yes, it was. And she leant forward, she goes, you're shit. I mean, it's not the word, but the thing is, that took meticulous planning to do that.
Yeah.
Why people seem to think that they can say stuff to comedians that they can't say to
I just like the idea of there's beautiful women walking around going, where can I find a comic to really piss off?
I mean, we have to talk about, because I mean, you've done so many other different things. You've written so many books, and you're also a huge fan of music, aren't you? I have to ask. This is one of my personal questions. I mean, how do you feel now about Morrissey?
Well, it's like there's a lot of other bands, aren't there? So it's not a problem. I still listen to the Smiths. And I did actually ask my son, because my son's become a huge Smiths fan because he saw Johnny Marr at the Beautiful Days Festival.
Right.
So it was nothing to do with me. I was away in Edinburgh, and I get back and I'm like, who's playing Rush Home Ruffians? And that's what I love actually about teenagers now. Their music taste is not about contemporary. It's just they find it through different algorithms.
Oh, yeah.
So he'd go, Dad, do you know a band called The Sundays? I go, yeah, I do know that. He goes, oh, they're really great, aren't they? And it's, he went to go and see, he saw Kneecap and Fontaine's DC at Finsbury Park. And I rang him up when I knew the gig was over, saying, because it was the first time I think he'd been to an outdoor gig when I wasn't there. I said, do you have a good time? He went, yeah, Dad, but I think I might have over-moshed. I've got a bit of a headache now. I said, is your nose running? He said, no, it's not. I said, that means you haven't moshed so much that you've loosened your brain and it's coming out of the holes in your face. You're okay. He said, Dad, you always give me the sagest advice. But yeah, and I did say to him, do you want to go and see Morrissey at the O2? I mean, it's not a venue I particularly want to go and see Morrissey anyway, but I think it's, again, he's revealed himself to be, even though we should have known from so many of those interviews, even during the Smiths.
Yeah. The clues were all there.
Yeah, they were. That he's a bully as well, really. I mean, I know he's, the way he's thrown people out of the band and so many different relationships. And he is someone who, like Trump, he can only feel the slight to him. You know, it was. I did a gig with Vinnie Peculiar at the Brixton Windmill a few years ago, which was Mike Joyce and Andy Rourke and Vinnie Peculiar, and that was really interesting, sitting with them and chatting, because I felt that both Mike Joyce and Andy Rourke had a relationship with Morrissey that was like some people's relationship with God. You know, when their life has gone horribly wrong, or something terrible has happened, and they hate God, but they can't stop worshipping God. And it really felt like that with Andy Rourke and Mike Joyce, that they know that Morrissey is this most remarkable creature, but also incredibly spiteful.
Yeah.
I wouldn't really bother going to see him. It's not of any interest, and mainly because I do like seeing new bands, and I do. I was saying beforehand, I don't know if you were there when in Glastonbury I saw this fantastic band called Duo Root. I think that's how it's pronounced. It's RUUT, and we were talking about them because they're from Estonia, and they have this incredible, like a table with these strings on, and they stand opposite each other playing the one instrument. It's beautiful, and they sing all these Estonian songs, and they're both very pale, but they go. The next song is a love song, but it's Estonian, so it doesn't end well. And they just and it's like, and I watch them, and I still love finding new things, or sometimes things that I miss. Like, I don't know if you know Petrol Girls. Petrol Girls, every time I put up anything about kind of Epstein or Prince Andrew or whatever, I always use them as the soundtrack. They've got this song called Touch Me Again and I'll Fucking Kill You. And it is, and the end of it, there's no music playing. It's just her going, touch me again and I'll fucking kill you. Touch me again and I'll fucking kill you. And I think we need more of that. Played around 11s.
You've done the science podcast. You've done the book club. And I was just wondering if there is, in a sort of another sphere, there is a sort of similar Robin Ince in another world, sort of parallel universe, that doesn't read books, just watch TikTok videos, drinks beer, supports West Ham.
No, fortunately what happened was, due to my friendship with Brian Cox, I found a way of closing down all those universes. So that's ended up fine. Yeah. I love that. Like, doing Monkey Cage has always been such a joy, and I think I want to do another podcast now, which is just curiosity generally, because I think that's the one thing that unites. I mean, we were talking beforehand about certain people that you look at, like Jane Goodall, who was an incredible hero of mine, died very recently, and we had her on the Infinite Monkey Cage, and Bill Bailey was on as well, and Bill at one point went, Jane, if I met a chimpanzee, I'd probably start with something like, and she went, oh no, Bill, that would be a very bad opening gambit. You need to open a lot more with a kind of and he went, oh, thanks very much. And it's just like this kind of, and you look at, and it's like every time, I know Carl Rayner's not here anymore, but you know, Mel Brooks and Carl Rayner, when you saw the two of them having their TV dinners, watching their musicals and wearing their Black Lives Matter t-shirts, and you just go, that is, you know, and Mel Brooks, you look like when he was on the One Show, and you know, being the One Show, that typical kind of innocuous BBC thing, and we're joined by Mel Brooks, who's 95 years old, so we will be speaking quite patronisingly to him. And then, of course, within 3 minutes, they don't have the show anymore. The show is totally out of control. Yeah. Mel Brooks owns the show, and Russell Crowe is on as well, and he's just sat there laughing and laughing again. I'm sat next to Mel Brooks, and you watch that, and you see that curiosity. Yes. And you just go, that is the way forward. And I think that's another thing that we would like to see. I'd like to see more in stand-up, which is, I think a lot of stand-up can be very negative, and sometimes not even about big issues, about very minor things, just niggling. And that, I did a gig with Joanna Neary recently in Eastbourne, fantastic pub there called the Lamb Inn. And this woman came up afterwards and said to Joe, it's really nice to see an evening of kind comedy. And kind comedy doesn't mean it has to be innocuous. You can still talk about major things, but it's that bit of, again, trying to say we can build something better. I mean, I find, you know, poets like Audre Lorde and people like that very influential, you know, odd in one way, because you go, you know, here's a white guy from the home counties, middle class, but someone like her, queer black feminist poet, and I look at what she's saying and about how your silence will not protect you, and I'm looking about the amount of love that is in those words for someone who has seen so much kind of oppression and denigration, and I think you see that and you go, look at those, like there's an amazing poet called Andrea Gibson, and I don't know if anyone's aware of Andrea Gibson. They died back in August, but I was reading one of their poems in a book called You Better Be Lightning. Isn't that a great title? You Better Be Lightning. And one of the things Andrea Gibson said was, the truth may not be hopeful, but the telling of it is. I think, oh my God. But there's a poem all about the fact that Andrea Gibson kind of avoided beauty and wonder. I think almost that fear, because if you reveal something that you love, people feel they've got a power over you because they can smash that thing, right? And so it's a greater action than revealing what you hate. For 4 verses, they just write about avoiding the wonders of the world. And then Andrea Gibson writes, in a red velvet theatre in New Orleans, Maya Angelou walks on the stage in 17 careful steps. She takes a breath, and in that breath, I hear the birth of God. And I'm like, whoa. And that's, that beauty.
Yeah.
And I do think that's what we need to see more of in comedy. We need to see people who go out there and go, and it's not about the bullying. It's about that thing of going, because people are full of despair. We've watched what's happened in Gaza, and we've seen the inaction of all of these governments around the world. And I think certainly for our generation, I think it probably feels like the most shocking realisation of the utter dereliction of duty that almost perpetually exists in history. We've seen it in action.
Well, especially with the resurgence of of reform and the resurgence of racism and stuff like that, it kind of feels like we've gone back.
Well, I'm just going to say,
the late 70s.
You can't beat a good moan. That's. I'm just going to finish. You can't beat a good moan.
Yes.
And in terms of a comedian, as much as I'd love to be positive and send
you've got to do what
love into
suits
the
you,
world,
haven't you?
yeah, I'm a moany old git. I mean, that's just pretty much it. I know who I am, and I'm happy to be that person.
What's your favourite thing to moan about? What is the bit that maybe it's a routine you don't always get to? So one of those nights that you go, oh, I've got time, and you can feel that connection in the audience with.
No, I mean, moans I haven't done yet, which I'm dying to do, which is we can do everything. No, we fucking well can't. I hate the fact that kids are being told nothing is impossible. You can do whatever you want. No, you fucking well can't. I cannot become queen of this country, and I don't mean king.
Yes, you
I want to
can,
be
Paul.
queen.
Yeah.
It's not going to bloody happen, because not everything is possible, and I think you need to know that not everything is possible so you can go and change it.
Oh, God, all I'm seeing now is just that shot of you on the throne, looking to the camera and going, I really wasn't expecting that.
I think now is a good time to do your poem.
Oh, right, yes. So
Okay.
This is this is not there's a final version.
Only because I think it could be taken as a bit of a moan. That's
I think it is. That's the bit, when people, one of the things that will often happen if you criticise someone who's rich or famous, they go, you're just jealous.
You're just jealous.
Going, I'm not jealous. I have no jealousy towards, I don't want Jimmy Carr's £8 million mansion. Right,
I do.
I haven't got a very big house. I would like a house that fitted a few more of my books, but actually, and I don't drive a car, and I don't. I was in a little budget hotel the other day after doing a gig near Chester, and I was just eating cold lentil soup out of a can with a teaspoon.
That's what I do.
And at no point was I like, I'm in a Ken Loach film. I was like, I've had a lovely evening, and I'll tell you what, I like cold lentil soup. I wouldn't mind a bigger spoon. Perhaps I should carry one with me, because it's taking longer than I'd hoped.
I like it with the
Nevertheless.
teaspoon. A teaspoon's better.
Yeah.
I actually put a picture of a can of chicken soup with my teaspoon and then serving suggestion. Because that's how I like it.
Serving session, Ibis. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right, so this is Wanking with Louis in Saudi. The edges of the edgy comic are a geometry of non-Euclidean bigotry. He challenges the powerless eagerly, loves to be derogatory, though carefully, so he won't damage his lovely, lovely fee. And his cheerleaders add the illusion that his punching down has nobility. Free speech, free speech, free, he declares, before taking a pile of cash from Saudi. His speech is never free. Who's got the biggest case of money? Shake hands with sheikhs and kings who execute their critics, then make excuses. That your appearance was really an ironic take on human rights abuses.
There we go. Wow. So,
Yes, you're going to wrap up now.
yeah, that is a good point to wrap up.
It is indeed. I was looking at your watch backwards.
I can do a little poem
Upside
about
down.
Greta Thunberg. Do you want a poem
Come on.
about Greta? Because I love Greta
Come on,
Thunberg.
Robin.
Yes. Okay.
This is the fact that
We've locked the doors.
All of those different men who go, I'm going to go and wind up Greta Thunberg, and then come back 3 minutes later and go, she was really rude to me, and she made fun of my willy. And so this one goes out to Andrew Tate, the monetised misogynist, who, when he wanted to show off about all the cars he had to her, she replied, please do enlighten me, email me at smalldickenergy@getalife.com. And didn't take it well, and in not taking it well, it's what led to his arrest. So well done, Greta. There are a few things I like more than seeing Greta get the better of yet another pompous predator. With this new fail, the alpha male slides down the Greek alphabet like a mole rat on a helter-skelter, bumping his head on Kappa and falling ever deeper into the crapper. Another autistic hero shows up another macho zero.
Yay! That's very brilliant. Brilliant. Well, I think sadly we've run out of time, haven't we?
We have run out of time. Clock on the wall says it's time to go.
Clock on the wall. And we didn't even get onto the train system. Never.
Oh, we've got to do that. That's a special, isn't it, that we need to do? It's a special that will be delayed before going out by some years.
Yes.
Yes, you call that one Men Who Don't Drive.
Yeah.
Special podcast for you.
Just an emoji of two guys crying. Yeah. Thank you very much for everyone for coming. Hope you've enjoyed the podcast. Thank you very, very much for Robin. Let's have a round of applause for Robin.
Well, let's have for Paul and
Thank
Steve.
you very much.
Yeah, I'm going to pretend we've got merchandise to sell at the end of the gig.
Lentil soup.
So basically, I'm selling these invisible sort of cups. So if you want to give me money at the door when you come out, I'll hand you the invisible cup and you can take it home and do what you will with it.
What you will.
Some people think I'm joking here. I'm not joking. Yeah. I'm going to be there. Get your money
the invisible
ready.
Saucers as well.
And the invisible card reader.
What if there's a chip in the invisible saucer? Do I get money off?
No, it makes it more special.
Oh, okay.
That's called the punctum, the beauty of the artistic piece. So yeah, that's it. It's done. It's over. Go back to your miserable lives. We'll see you another time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thanks very much. See you later. Bye-bye.